Hello dear chess lovers, today we are starting a new series on the evolution of Dommaraju Gukesh, the Indian prodigy who might become a world champion by the end of this year. He won the candidates tournament in a very impressive way this year, and my vision for the series is to show you his style, what kind of a player he is, and how he progressed across the years, how his chess has evolved across the years. I will show you some of his instructive wins, but also losses in his series to show you how he learned from his mistakes, how he fixed his problems, and how he evolved to be a world-class grandmaster. He is still 17 years old, by the way, folks. He's still extremely young, teenager. So for this, I'm using chess-based database. I start from this first year of 2014. Earliest games of Gukesh is found in 2014. So we'll see how an 8-year-old Gukesh was playing chess in today's episode. I will show you two of his wins and one instructive loss. And then we'll also have some arguments. Also give me feedback, please. That's my vision for the series. I want to maybe go year by year, maybe every 2 years to show you maybe 3 instructive wins and maybe one of his losses to basically also balance, right? To show the both directions and so on. So let's begin with the first game where Gukesh was playing with white pieces in under 8 World Championship in 2014. He starts off with the move e4, folks, and it starts like a Caro-Kann defense. By the way, he's only 1661 in this game, folks. It's a very low elo at this stage, but still, his vision and his chess is already showing some promise, as you will see, hopefully, in this video, folks. So it's only around 1600, but probably underrated already at that time, as you can imagine, right? As most Indian prodigies these days, right? They're quite underrated at that level. See, he gets the pawn to e5, and now it sort of becomes this sort of a French structure after d4 and e6, right? So we are playing a French defense, and obviously the bishop on c8 is crying, and white had a beautiful pawn on a5, which will be supporting the kingside attack in the middle game. And Gukesh already with this move, knight e2, he's signaling the move c3. He's anticipating black from pushing c5, and he wants to preserve his pawn chain like this. And also this knight is transferring to the kingside initiative. Already at this age of 8, he's showing some multi-purpose moves, folks. Okay, knight g3, castles, bishop d3. Of course, our bishop is designed to take that diagonal. After c5, well, of course, c3, that was the main point. The advanced French, much better version for white as well, because black lost so many tempo already, and their pieces are just sleeping on the queen side, and black is careless. Black just keeps waiting and making small moves, and comes the move h4. To my mind, h4 signifies an upcoming assault on the king side, and Gukesh is right. He's already eyeing the king side with all of his pieces, and maybe you can already see what's coming after the move bishop e7. You can stop the video here, folks, and tell me a good plan for white. What is the best move for white in this position? I'm now testing your pattern recognition in chess, folks. Yes, we are talking about the Greek gift sacrifice, which Gukesh didn't play. And that's the most surprising part for this entire game to me. Gukesh didn't go for the winning sacrifice. The Greek gift sacrifice with the bishop takes h7. That's a stock standard pattern. I thought the main point of h4 was to prepare the Greek gift. Just works like a switch watch, because after knight g5 check, black is sort of helpless. If you take my knight, then just opens up the h file. Queen h5s are coming. You see where it's going, right, folks? After queen h5, mate in 1 is threatened in both different directions. After f5, you tell me the finisher. You tell me the finishing blow. Yes, we go g6, and the king is boxed in. And this is coming next. Black should resign. Mate will follow. After bishop takes h7 check, folks, really, black has no way to save himself, because after takes knight g5, if you go to g8 with the king, then comes queen h5 anyways, right? And how are you going to stop this queen h7 mate? There is no knight f6 defense because of the pawn on e5, talking about patterns. And after, let's say, takes, everything is the same. Now we're just facing this enormous mate to 1 threats. After f5 comes g6 again. It transposes, right? Black has no way to save itself. After this, you can go knight g5 anyways, followed by queen h5. So this is the very surprising part to me. After bishop b7, 8-year-old Gukesh did not go for the Greek gift sacrifice. Is that because he didn't learn it? Can it be possible that he didn't actually know the existence of this pattern? Please comment on YouTube. What are you thinking about this? Because I'm not sure myself. Why does he not go for the sacrifice, which was obviously winning because of White's amazing initiative on the king side, right? Instead, he chooses the move knight g5 in his position, folks. Interesting. He goes knight g5. He's attacking without sacrificing, and that also signifies 8-year-old Gukesh. He's already sort of shying away from sacrifices. He wants to build up his position and win in a gradual way. After h6 comes the sacrifice. Now he goes queen g4, and that's also very surprising to me because he's accepting a sacrifice here, but he did not go for the Greek gift sacrifice, which was much more stock standard and obviously strong at that moment, right? Queen g4 is on the board. C takes d4 happens. Well, if you take my knight, you see it, right? Queen h4 is coming, and you get mated on the h file. You have no defense against those threats. So it's obviously not takeable, that knight on g5. And the queen is joining the attack. cd, cd, very simple chess. Bishop b4 check. Yes, now he's allowing bishop b4 check actually. And if you go to f1 with the king, you allow the move bishop a6. And those bishops will be traded off. That's exactly why Gukesh goes king d1. The king is a very safe piece on d1 because black has no pieces that can attack the king on d1, folks. That's the reason, right? After bishop c8, another very passive move. I mean, really, really terrible play for black as well, folks. Not the best. And here Gukesh goes knight 7. Attacking without sacrificing continues, right? He's hitting the rook, but also he's anticipating, he's threatening. Bishop takes h6. Gukesh simply wants to win a pawn. f5 is on the board. Gukesh goes queen g6. The queen is very safe, guarding that knight on h7, and still bishop h6 is a big threat. Rook f7. In fact, it's Gukesh who won a pawn in his position. Incredible, right? Usually we are the ones who is sacrificing while attacking. Here Gukesh is attacking with having an extra pawn as well, right? So his style when he was 8 is definitely not Mikhail Tal-like, right? He doesn't go for like sacrifices. He doesn't burn the bridges. He's playing much more gradually. Takes, bishop g5, for example, keeping the bishop and bringing more pieces to the attack. So what also Gukesh is doing in all these games is that he's bringing everyone to the party. He wants to play with all of his pieces in chess. And that's also sort of shapes his unique style at this age, folks. Queen a4 check, king e2. Looks like the king is sort of chased around, but again, black has no manpower to exploit this. Queen takes d4. Yes, you allowed some queen invasions, but Gukesh says everything is taken care of. And here he finds the next move. Maybe you can tell me, folks. Please stop the video and tell me Gukesh's next move. Yes, knight f6 check. This pawn is pinned. The king h8 will be answered by queen h7 mate, so you have to give up the exchange. But after this pawn is being created as a great attacking function as well, right? This pawn is a huge piece in supporting attack on the king side. Yes, you have one more check in the position, but after king f3, everything is secure and protected. Just look at the king on f3. No one can touch that piece. And look at the king on g8. It's facing enormous threats like this, and black has no defense. He tried queen d4 check, and I want you to stop the video right now, folks, and find the mate in 2 for white. Yes, Gukesh found it, obviously. f7 check, followed by queen h5 mate. Isn't it beautiful? White basically won this game without sacrificing much, right? Just basically brought all the pieces to the king side and won. And still, to my mind, a very surprising thing was that after bishop d3 and bishop b7, Gukesh didn't go for the stock standard Greek gift sacrifice. What are your thoughts about this? Do you think he knew the pattern but chose not to go for it because he thought maybe it's not even necessary? Or can it be that he actually didn't learn this pattern until this time? And maybe only after this game, he learned, his coach told him that this also was a much easier win for white from this position. Please let me know, folks, because this will connect to the next game of Gukesh. Again, from the same championship, 2014, he's playing again with white pieces. And one thing that is interesting with Gukesh at this age, also later on, is his sort of liking for the King's Indian structures. He's choosing a King's Indian attack formation, folks. Can you see it? This formation repeats itself in Gukesh's games at this age. He loves these setups for white. Also, he applies it with the black pieces until much later. It's still in his arsenal, the King's Indian defense, by the way. So you see, he starts learning those patterns already as an 8-year-old kid. Here, the game goes in normal directions, castle, castle, and c3. Bishop d7. Well, black is sort of keeping it flexible. Gukesh also stuffs b5 with this move, keeping it flexible on the queen side, preparing knight c4, rook c8, queen e2, right? Again, very flexible and typical King's Indian attack formation. Pieces are slowly finding their ideal locations. Rook e1, right, making all the useful moves in this typical setup with white pieces. And here black goes a6. And again, Gukesh chooses a stock standard King's Indian attack move, knight f1, opening up the bishop, but also, as you can anticipate, right, preparing later on h4 followed by knight h2 ideas. Very typical. And here black goes for the structural change in the center, and obviously Gukesh reacts with the push e5. This signifies really, this beautiful pawn on e5 signifies our push, our initiative on the king side, right? From now on, this pawn will be used as a great tool to support the king side initiative, and he overprotects that pawn with the move bishop f4, another very typical and stock standard King's Indian attack idea. Knight h6, queen d2, hitting that knight after knight f5. That knight is not a stable piece, will be chased away very soon with the move g4. But first, Gukesh improves the bishop, tempo on the queen, and after queen b6 comes the next move, g4, that knight will be chased away from its defensive post. And already here, Gukesh finds the next move. You can already tell me maybe what you're thinking about this. Yes, he goes bishop f6. You see, he's converting this e5 pawn to a potential attack on the king side, because can black take our bishop? You tell me. You stop the video and tell me whether that bishop is takeable, folks. No. The answer is no, because if you take my bishop, then a fishbone pawn is created on f6, followed by queen h6, and black is totally helpless against this threat. You see, if black is careless, they will lose in 2 moves. And here already, Gukesh transfers his pieces to the king side slowly and gradually. Black goes d4. I made a video about this, center and flank connection. When you're attacking on the flanks, you want the center to be as stable as possible. So, what should white play? Yes, you're a great player if you found the move c4, closing down the center altogether, stabilizing the center altogether, thus not giving any squares to the black pieces, thus having a green signal to attack on the king side. So Gukesh already at this age, he knows the center and flank connection in chess, and he gradually builds up his king side initiative, right? With which move? Of course, knight g3. That knight is now joined the attack on the king side with some knight e4 ideas to follow, right? Gukesh wants to bring everybody to the party. Next move, how does this queen join the attack? You're facing knight b3 threats. Where should the queen move? Yes, folks, the queen is entering the zone. As Daniel King likes to say, the queen is very close now to the king on g8, and Gukesh is transferring more pieces to the king side. You see how he's gradually building an attack? He's a very patient player. Queen h4. The queen is well placed, hitting the pawn on f6. Now there's also threat of takes, followed by queen f6 check and so on, right? You see the function of the white pieces on the king side, while black only is a single defender around their king. All of their pieces are offside on the queen side. So black is desperate. There's also this threat on the knight, and black pushes g5. And here comes my question, folks. Imagine you're playing this position in a real game, practical game. What would be your candidate moves? How would you treat this position with white pieces? Please stop the video. I'm sure you saw some good-looking ideas. But what would be your practical decision in the actual game? Folks, I will show you Gukesh's move. The guy is cold like a cucumber, right? He plays the move queen h3. He does not bother himself with all the sacrifices, which I'm sure came to your mind, right? Knight takes g5 is one. Bishop takes g5 is a second. In fact, both of these moves are winning for white, but they require concrete calculation. And Gukesh says, who needs that? If I play the move queen h3, I'm keeping all my advantages in this position, and I will take it from there. Again, he's attacking without sacrificing. At this age, just like in the last game, right? That signifies Gukesh. He probably also played this very quickly without spending so much time in those calculations. I can show you. Knight takes g5 is winning, but you must calculate the move knight g6, hitting the queen, right? Queen h5, and then after takes on g5. Yes, you're still winning after knight e4, but who wants to even calculate this? White is winning because knight g5 is coming next, followed by this, right? Obviously, 3 attackers versus, well, soon only 1 defender. You can't really survive that. So, but you know, Gukesh says it's not even needed to go there. You can also take with the bishop, by the way. That's also winning for white. After takes, knight g6. That's also a winning line for white, for example, right? This, followed by knight h5. And because you're hitting that bishop, the bishop cannot really take the pawn on a5 because of mate in 1, right? So if you calculate deeply, you're winning after both of these sacrifices on g5. But Gukesh says, I don't need to bother with that. Queen h3, my queen is still well placed on the king's side. Now takes followed by knight h5, knight f6 is coming, and my queen will still play a big part in the attack. Knight g6, he simply takes the bishop, removing the defender of the king, followed by, you tell me, knight h5 check, of course, right? Because that knight is eyeing that juicy outpost on f6, right? Simple chess, simple chess. King h8 followed by knight f6. You see, knight f6 threatens the free bishop, but also threatens queen takes h6 mate. Isn't it simple chess? He basically simply improves every single piece, goes for the piece trades, and achieves a winning advantage. It's as simple as that. And already this maturity, already at this age of 8. Beautiful, right? King g7, taking the free bishop again. Attacking without sacrificing, attacking with extra material. Just like the last example, folks. Gukesh likes both to have attacking chances, but also being up material, of course, right? As we all do. Now white is converting nicely. I will show you even this phase, by the way, right? Knight h5, checking f8, rook d1, every single piece is doing a function. Look at this. The queen is misplaced. He improves the queen. Queen f3. Gukesh never plays with bad pieces. Queen f6. Maximum activation for the queen. Even with the extra piece for white, white pieces radiating with energy. Just look at the bishop, for example, right? Rook a1, queen b4, and now comes knight e4. Again, please take a stock and ask yourself how Gukesh is playing this position. Every single piece is finding great function. Knight d6 are there, rook b1s are there. This knight is hanging. Every single piece is beautiful for white. Rooks are connected. Look at the black pieces. Terrible, right? Rook b1. Well, this knight will be lost, so he tries knight b3 and comes the final calculation phase. Please stop the video here, folks, and find Gukesh's winning line for white. Now comes concrete calculation that forces resignation. And you're a great player if you found the sequence. Rook takes b3, queen takes b3, followed by knight takes c5. And here, black resigns because that's the first threat, and mate in 1 is the second threat, and the queen cannot stop knight d7 check. Isn't it beautiful? Very short and sweet calculation. And after queen b6 comes beautiful family fork, also mate, by the way. Just look how he paid way for this beautiful mate by even with extra piece activating every single piece to their ideal locations. At the age of 8, folks, his rating is 1661 at this game. And again, we see one interesting part of Gukesh's game, right? Attacking without sacrificing. He knows his King's Indian patterns by heart, and he applies it in this game in a beautiful way without taking any risk by simply using his traditional chess understanding and activation of every single piece step by step. So this level of calmness and patience is also still with Gukesh, right? That's what it sort of separates him from his counterparts, maybe, even at this time. He's cold as a cucumber. He doesn't hurry. He doesn't rush things, but also his chess understanding and the playing strength is also, of course, he can calculate, by the way. He can calculate when needed, but he also understands, right? Sometimes you don't need to sacrifice. You don't need to calculate like crazy in a position like this, right? Because that will involve taking risks. He understands that I don't need to take any risks here. I play queen h3, and all the future cards are mine. All the long-term advantages are mine. So I will play the position much more quietly, he says. Now, I will show you one loss of Gukesh from the same tournament, a very instructive loss, where to me, he went wrong because he tried to apply the King's Indian patterns to a structure that wasn't justified. He was sort of blindly applying some of those structures in the King's Indian attack in a structure that was very robust for black. Black chooses the Botvinnik setup with the black pieces, Botvinnik English. I'm coming there, folks. I'm talking about this triangle of pawns, right? Botvinnik system with reverse colors. And that turns out to be a very hard nut to crack against as a King's Indian attack player, right? You see, and Gukesh is sort of applying the same things that he applied in the last game. He's making all the moves that he played on the other game, right, in the previous game, but it's sort of backfiring against this very sound system for black. So that's a good lesson for you. You can take this with the black pieces, Botvinnik setup against the King's Indian attack players. Trust me, that's a very, very sound and robust system, folks. Okay, so here black plays h6 to stop knight g5, bishop g5 ideas. Gukesh goes h4 because he still wants to attack on the king side, but in fact, things are far away from that. It's in fact black who is pushing on the king side with the push f5. That's a very flexible system for black. Black can play for d5 or f5 in the structure. Everything is ready for those pawn breaks, and the black king is very safe. There is no attacking chances for white. Why? Well, first of all, you can't even achieve a pawn on e5, as we saw in last two examples, right? That will be impossible for white to achieve a pawn on e5 that can support your attack on the king side. So you cannot just blindly apply the same maneuvers to the structure, which Gukesh sort of does because he's sort of making all the typical moves in the King's Indian attack, but he will be punished with the push f4, and suddenly it's black who is pushing on the king side, right? That's a beautiful position for black already, and Gukesh was in trouble in this position. If you look at the white pieces, they're not really great. The bishop is also quite terrible on g2. The knight is misplaced. I mean, the bishop is also locked up. We are lacking so much space, and we have nothing in return, right, for this, basically. And black can even push d5 later on to gain more space. So things have gone wrong because I think Gukesh blindly applied his King's Indian attack motifs in this game, right? So again, I'm going to show you some of his losses because it's very important to understand as the evolution of a player, how he managed to solve his problems, how he managed to overcome his issues, right? So please remember this game. Later we'll refer back to this game, for example, you know, if we find a relevant game, we can always refer back to this game and discuss how he improved on this. Rook d8 supports d5. White is lacking so much space. Gukesh keeps on waiting, you know, back and forth. That's already quite bad, actually. King h7. Black is not in a hurry. Gukesh finds a nice exchange operation. He's a great strategic player, right? He exchanges off his bad bishop for the opponent's good bishop. That's great, Gukesh. Already at the age of 8, he understands his bad pieces and good pieces, and he engages in exchange operations. Yes, that's a good exchange for white. That solves some part of his space problem too, but still, it allows black in pushing the pawn to f3 very, very soon, and black will use the drawback of that bishop missing on g2. That pawn on f3 is becoming a big attacking force as well. Queen e3 will be answered by d4. You see, we are lacking space. If you look at the white pieces, they are sort of choked in its position, and black achieves a beautiful position. After d takes c3, well, if you take with the b pawn in this position, folks, you'll be hit with moves like c4, and the entire thing is collapsing for white. So that's why after dc, Gukesh took back with the queen in this position, and black should have gone directly to d4 with the knight. With a huge threat of knight e2, black is achieving huge advantage in this position purely because of their piece activity. And look at the white pieces. But black in the actual game, he tries c4 to exploit that pin. But this gives Gukesh some chances to survive because now the bishop is getting a good square on a3. Well, Gukesh is sacrificing a pawn to stabilize. The problem is that black's position is just too robust for that. And after h5, this knight also has to go to h2. I mean, look at that, right? Buried pieces, buried knights on the king side. Things have gone wrong for white, for sure. Queen c4 also hits the pawn on a4. And Gukesh now fights, keeps on fighting. He's a great fighter. We'll come back to it in his later years, right? How he manages to swindle from bad positions purely from his fighting spirit. Queen e4, knight g3, hit the queen, right? He activates his knight as well. He takes on h5 after the queen trade, of course, right? First bishop c5, of course, knight c6, then takes on h5, and Gukesh seems to be fighting back in this position, right? From that terrible position, he managed to play g4, knight g3, activated his pieces, and now he's sort of back in the game after knight takes h5. The problem is that black still has this beautiful pawn on d3 and also good pieces in general, right? This knight is also quite terrible. Rook c1, and here black player plays bishop h6, preserves the bishop with tempo on the rook. Bishop e7, knight e7, rook c7. Gukesh activates the rook. Looks like a beautiful move. But here, black player finds a great move, king g6, unpinning the king, but also hitting the loose knight on h5. And that's a very good move for black that forces knight g3, and black will now save their knight on e7 with knight c6. White, Gukesh takes on b7. If you take a stock in this position, folks, just take a stock. It's equal material, but still, black is preferred because of his better pieces. The pawn on d3 is huge. There are knight d4 ideas as well, as next move as it shows us. This knight d4 is a very strong move. The knight is coming to e2 on the next move. As you can see here, right? Knight e2 is on the board. And unfortunately, black will generate one more pass pawn very, very soon, folks. If you take on e2, that's just terrible for you, of course. But if you don't take on e2, then this happens, right? Knight takes g3, fg3, and black managed to create 3 connected passed pawns. And they turn out to be very powerful. Just look at that, right? After e4, black, at the cost of a pawn, by the way, achieved these amazing pawns in the center. That reminds me of the game Mcdonnell versus Labourdonnais. I will show you what I mean by, guys. That's a chess classic. Rook a3 tried by Gukesh. d2, that's a beautiful win for black, by the way. Knight g4, and comes a very strong move, rook c8, and black now invades the first rank with rook c1 ideas. He allows rook a6, he gives up the bishop, right? Well, in this position, white didn't take, because if you take on h6, then comes rook c1, and you can't even save your rook. If you try this, then your rook is lost. We have no time for that because of this, right? Black wins. So after king g7, Gukesh tried one more check in this position after king f8, rook h7. He's really helpless against the pawn avalanche, so to speak. Rook c1 is on the board. And again, look at the effect of those 3 pawns, guys. That's a beautiful loss, actually. This game comes e3. Now you're talking about Mcdonnell versus Labourdonnais because of those 3 pawns. E, D, and F passers. They are huge, of course. You give up the bishop, comes e2 check. Oh my god, look at those pawns, guys. King g1. Well, e1 equals queen check. Rook e1. Queen check, king h2. For some reason, Gukesh doesn't resign. He plays until the very end, maybe out of courtesy to the opponent. He allows a mate on the next move after takes. Rook h1 mate, and the game was over like that. Probably out of courtesy, or maybe he's still a young player. He might expect some blunders. He kept on playing. But I think this game is very instructive loss for Gukesh. Things went wrong. Firstly, because he applied the King's Indian patterns to a position that wasn't called for, to a very robust system of bottoming setup. This is not the best way to play against that, right? Because you never had attacking chances. Black took over the center. Black, in fact, achieved f5, f4, and you didn't get anything in return. So we'll see how Gukesh either gives up King's Indian attack or finds an antidote against the bot-winning setup. That remains to be seen in his later years, and I'm pretty sure he took great lessons from this game, folks. What do I mean by a chess classic? Mcdonnell versus Labourdonnais, folks, 1834. I'm sure many of your chess lovers know this game. That's a chess classic. Black player in this position demonstrated the strength of those 3 pawns. Just like in Gukesh game, black achieved those 3 connected pass pawns, and black goes queen e1, and now we'll see the pawn avalanche. The final picture of this game is one of the most beautiful in chess history. Rook c1. What should black do here, folks? You tell me. d2, of course. Look at the pawns, folks. Look at the effect of those pawns supporting the queen on e1. Queen c5 was tried. At least he hopes black doesn't see the threat. But of course, black is a strong player, one of the strongest at the time. Labourdonnais, he was a great player, folks. Rook d1, comes the move, e3. Please look at those pawns, pawn triangle, folks. Look at the effect of those pawns. Queen c3, and comes the final phase of the game. Please stop the video and tell me the winning continuation for black in this position. That the joy to calculate this position with black. Black to play and win. You're a great player, folks. If you came up with the sequence, queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and e2. This was the final picture of this historical game that I'm sure many of you chess lovers have seen this pattern at some point in your lives. Those pawns are huge. White has no defense. If you take on d2, I can even make a rook and win the game like that if I want to show off, right? Just to show you the strength of those pawns, this Gukesh game reminded me of this chess classic Labourdonnais. I'm 100% sure Gukesh also knew this game either before that game or after that loss, and that shaped his later handling of how to play against the Botvinnik setup, or that he shouldn't blindly repeat the King's Indian attack structures against anything, right? That was the basic lesson, at least to me, that was the basic lesson from that game. Folks, hope you enjoyed today's session. I did it to give you the first indications of what a player Gukesh was at the age of 8. Of course, he will grow like crazy in the later years. So this was only the beginning, but already, right, we have some very good material in our hands at the age of 8. It's only 1660 ELO rated, by the way, right? But he's already showing some signals of being a superstar. At least to my mind, if you just take a step back and watch the video again, right? This vision of building an attack, this patience of bringing every single piece to the attack, this playing with piece harmony and coordination, that also signifies Gukesh. Of course, he's a great calculator too. He can calculate lines, but he also knows when to calculate and when to take risks already at that age. He can say no to sacrifices if he knows there is all the long-term cards. More on that later on. I'm sure some very nice games are waiting us in this series, and I want your feedback on this video. Do you like this structure? Do you like me to show some of his losses as well as wins? And how many games per video do you want me to analyze? My goal is to at least look at this every single year, show you maybe from age 8, 9, 10 moving forward. He's only 17, by the way. I'm sure we're going to come there at some point. If you want me to only cover once every 2 years, let me know. If you think it will be too long otherwise, let me know, okay? I'm here to help you improve your game. I'm also learning from great players in chess history this way. You also learn how people are solving their chess issues as they grow as chess players. Please give me a like and subscribe if you like this video, folks. That's very important for me to be able to produce similar content for you. And I will catch you in the next episode on Gukesh Evolution. Thank you.